There's a certain serenity that greets you in retirement. You exchange the constant buzz of deadlines and conference calls for the soft rhythm of neighborhood birds and the drone of distant lawnmowers. That's exactly what I envisioned when I moved to Oakwood Heights. A quiet existence, maybe even a slower one full of the small, peaceful moments people my age learn to value. Morning, coffee on the porch, a friendly chat with the mailman, waving to neighbors as they walk their dogs. What I never anticipated was that one of those neighbors would end up triggering a federal investigation. The first hint came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon on Maple Ridge Drive, when the shriek of metal grinding against metal cut through the stillness. From my living room window, I saw Diane Peterson, our HOA president, crouch beside my mailbox with an electric drill. Her perfectly styled blonde hair bounced with each jerk of her hand as she worked the drill bit into the lock, totally unaware of the small black lens inside the mailbox, capturing every second of her handiwork. What Diane didn't realize was that she wasn't vandalizing just any mailbox. She was tampering with federal property outfitted with surveillance equipment that was about to upend her entire life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story begins much earlier. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I moved into the Oakwood Heights subdivision 6 months ago after retiring as a cybersecurity contractor for the Department of Defense. Years spent handling sensitive information and navigating threats from foreign actors taught me the value of privacy. So when I purchased my home, I enrolled in a little-known federal security program for former government contractors. It included a specially designed mailbox with built-in surveillance and reinforced construction. From day one, Diane Peterson made her disdain for me obvious. The first knock on my door came just 3 days after I moved in. She stood on my porch with the clipboard in hand and a tight, artificial smile that never reached her eyes. In a shrill tone, she announced that my moving truck had been on the street for 6 hours, an alleged violation of HOA Code 7.3.2. The fine, $75. I explained I was still unloading, but she simply tapped her clipboard and insisted the rules applied to everyone. No exceptions, but the mailbox. The mailbox became her fixation. 2 weeks later, the federal program installed a sturdy black metal box with a reinforced locking system. It stood out among the bland beige mailboxes lining our street, and Diane couldn't stand the sight of it. Notices began appearing on my door every single day, each one harsher than the last. First, a friendly reminder about approved mailbox styles. Then, formal warnings. Finally, a threat to pursue legal action if I didn't replace it within 7 days. I tried explaining that the mailbox was federal property, installed under an official program, but Diane brushed me off. She confidently declared that HOA rules superseded any government initiative. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of power-hungry arrogance reserved for someone who genuinely believed she ruled over a suburban kingdom of 300 homes. The harassment only escalated in the following months. Diane would wander by at dawn to photograph my yard, measuring the grass with a ruler. She cited me for having my trash cans visible for exactly 10 minutes too long after pickup. She even complained that my doorbell was 2 decibels louder than HOA guidelines allowed. Every violation came with a fine anywhere from $50 to $200. Neighbors slowly started sharing their own horror stories. Tom Martinez, 2 houses down, told me Diane made him repaint his house 3 times because the shade of blue wasn't precisely compliant. Sarah Williams, across the street, was fined because her grandchildren's bikes sat in her driveway for half an hour. Everyone in Oakwood Heights had a Diane story, but no one dared to confront her. She'd been president for 8 years and had ties to local attorneys who specialized in HOA enforcement. Things came to a head last Monday when Diane arrived at my door with 2 board members at her side. She boldly announced that they had unanimously voted to forcibly remove my mailbox if I did not comply within 24 hours. I calmly explained that tampering with the federal mailbox was a felony punishable by up to 3 years in prison and fines up to $250,000. Diane laughed in my face, insisting no jury would ever convict an HOA president for maintaining neighborhood standards. That evening, I called my former colleague at the Postal Inspection Service, Agent Rebecca Chen. I told her everything. Rebecca took the threat seriously. She reminded me that the surveillance system installed in my mailbox was actively monitored, and that any interference would automatically trigger a federal investigation. She advised me to document everything and let the system do what it was designed to do. Tuesday morning arrived eerily quiet. I pretended to leave for errands, but parked around the corner, slipping back through the greenbelt behind my house. Right on schedule 10:15 a.m. Diane's white Lexus rolled up to my curb. She stepped out with a large tool bag, scanning the street to make sure no one was around. Most neighbors were at work, and she was counting on it. I watched from my living room window as she unpacked her tools with the precision of someone who had done this before. Out came the drill, then the pry bar, and finally a hammer. She started with the drill, attacking the lock mechanism aggressively. When progress proved too slow, she shoved the pry bar into the seam and began hammering with increasing frustration. All the while, her phone stayed wedged between her shoulder and ear as she chatted with someone, later revealed to be her sister in Portland. Her voice carried across the quiet street as she bragged about teaching that weird loner a lesson and showing him who runs this neighborhood. She laughed about how the cops wouldn't care about a mailbox issue, and how her attorney would shut down any complaint I dared to make. What she didn't know was that every swing, every twist of her drill, every arrogant word, all of it was captured in crystal clear detail by the internal camera system. The moment she touched the lock, the tamper sensor alert had already pinged the Postal Inspection Service, and when she finally pried the door open and leaned in to inspect the inside, her face filled the camera frame in perfect clarity. She spent another 10 minutes rummaging through my mail, which consisted mostly of junk flyers and a small package from an online retailer. She held each envelope up to the sunlight, examining it with exaggerated suspicion, before tossing it carelessly back into the mangled box. When she tried to shut the damaged door, the warped metal refused to align. With an annoyed shrug, she scooped up her tools and drove off, leaving behind a destroyed piece of federal property and my private mail exposed to the open air. I waited exactly 1 hour before calling Agent Chen. She had already received the automated tamper alert and reviewed the footage. Her tone remained professional, but I could hear the quiet satisfaction in her voice as she told me this was one of the clearest, most undeniable cases of federal mail tampering she had seen in years. She assured me a team was being dispatched without delay. The next morning felt like a scene ripped straight from a crime drama. 2 black Suburbans rolled up in front of Diane's house at precisely 7 o'clock a.m. Federal agents in Navy windbreakers with Postal Inspection Service badges marched to her front door. I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching as Diane opened the door in silk pajamas. The annoyance on her face quickly morphed into shock, then raw terror as the agents presented their credentials and a search warrant. They spent 3 full hours inside her home. Eventually, they emerged carrying multiple evidence bags, including what unmistakably appeared to be the exact tools she had used to destroy my mailbox. Diane followed shortly afterward, escorted in handcuffs, still wearing her pajamas, though she had managed to slip on a pair of shoes. As they guided her toward the vehicle, she looked directly at me. The mixture of fury, confusion, and disbelief in her eyes is something I'll remember for the rest of my life. The news spread through Oakwood Heights in minutes. By noon, my doorbell hadn't stopped ringing. Neighbors crowded my porch, desperate for details. That evening, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. I attended, along with nearly 200 residents, the largest turnout in the association's history. The board's attorney explained that Diane had been charged with destruction of federal property and obstruction of mail delivery. He was quick to insist her actions were conducted as an individual, not on behalf of the HOA, though he admitted that the association might still face civil liability. The remaining board members sat stiffly on stage as frustrated residents lined up to air their grievances. Tom Martinez took the microphone first, recounting how Diane had forced him to spend $15,000 on pointless home modifications. Sarah Williams revealed that Diane had threatened to place a lien on her house over a $200 fine for leaving holiday decorations up 1 day too long. One by one, neighbors stood and shared their stories, painting a damning portrait of a woman who had ruled over the community like a petty dictator for nearly a decade. Then the investigation took a stunning turn the following week. While combing through evidence seized from Diane's home, federal investigators found something far more disturbing. Hidden in her home office were boxes of mail that didn't belong to her. Dozens of boxes. Apparently, my mailbox wasn't the first she had broken into. She had been stealing mail for years from residents she disliked or wanted leverage over. Credit card statements, personal checks, bank envelopes, even birthday cards stuffed with cash. The identity theft charges alone carried a potential 15-year federal sentence. Coupled with mail tampering and destruction of federal property, Diane was staring down some very serious time. Her attorney attempted to negotiate a plea bargain, but the evidence was overwhelming. The surveillance footage from my mailbox caught her committing multiple crimes while bragging about her power on the phone. The trial lasted only 3 days. The prosecution presented the video recordings, testimony from dozens of neighbors, and the mountain of stolen mail recovered from Diane's house. Her defense attorney attempted to spin her behavior as simple overzealousness in her role as HOA president, someone trying too hard to maintain neighborhood standards. But the jury wasn't fooled. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, they returned guilty verdicts on every charge. At sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. He condemned Diane's behavior as a gross abuse of authority and a betrayal of public trust. He emphasized that her position as HOA president made her crimes even more egregious, as she had used her power to harass her neighbors while enriching herself through stolen mail. The sentence was severe: 8 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and more than $300,000 in restitution owed to every resident she had harmed. Diane's face drained of color as the judge spoke. She swayed on trembling legs, gripping the defense table as her perfectly curated composure shattered. She burst into tears, begging the judge for leniency, but the moment for mercy had long passed. The bailiffs approached, secured her wrists, and led her away as her sobs echoed through the courtroom. If you love watching HOA bullies get exactly what they deserve, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more jaw-dropping neighborhood justice stories. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next.